Let's start this thing. Yeah. We're swimming today.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome on board on our weekly SEMAT Seminar Jumat, today 29 September 2023. Before we move on to our main event, we will hear a foreword from our head of postgraduate study program, Dr. Mirzan. The stage is yours.
Thanks Erin and selamat siang Bu Christine, Pak Yan, Pak Hoiril. Good afternoon everyone, thank you for your coming in our seminar Jumat or Friday seminar. This afternoon we have special guest lecture from Dr. Christine. She's talking about swimming with the Stegodon. Last week we had a workshop related to the hominin, and today we had a warm discussion about the Stegodon, how Stegodon swim across the ocean, and then how the Stegodon spread from, especially in the Southeast Asia country, including in Indonesia. Pak Miko, welcome. Thank you, Pak Miko, for your coming, and also for all the audience who join with us through Zoom meeting. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Christine.
Thank you, Pak Mirzam. A little introduction. Dr. Christine Hertler is a paleobiologist in ROCEEH research team in Frankfurt, Germany. She studies dispersal events in the Pleistocene in Africa and Eurasia, with a focus on paleoecology of early humans. Dr. Christine, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I would like to share with you first results of a new project we carried out actually over the last 2 years already. But we created a new tool to examine the impact of swimming on dispersal of terrestrial mammals, a topic which plays, of course, a very important role. I'm trying to share my screen now. So. Yes. I would like to introduce you not only to the results of the research project per se, but also to speak a bit longer about the method and the tool we have created, because it's actually quite useful and it can be applied, as you will see, to many different contexts. I have a few suggestions. As you see here, the Swimming with Stegodons project is, of course, not only my own work. I have a lot of colleagues collaborating with me from different institutes, but among them are Mika Reski Puspaningrum and Ivan Pramestianwa, two colleagues without whom we would not have been able to reconstruct the sea straits and to understand the Stegodons the way we did. So let me start with the problem. The map in the background here shows you fossil localities from which Stegodon are known. There's a very rough color code with respect to the age. And the size of the dots in the background tells you how big these Stegodons were. So if there are very big ones, like here in Java, that means they have more or less mainland size. Maybe they are a little smaller, but we have tiny dots here on Sumba, where they underwent island dwarfing to a very large extent. And if you want to model the dispersal of Stegodon across Wallacea, you need to integrate two different processes. The first of all is how can the Stegodons actually manage to settle an island out in Wallacea where there was never any land connection to the Sunda Shelf? And the second process is if they get smaller and smaller on their way when they are settling small islands, how far do they actually get? Is there a limit? And is that limit different for Stegodons which underwent less island dwarfing, larger ones? Is there a difference between both of the limits? And these are questions for which we cannot examine by just looking at the distribution of fossil localities. Of course, if we know that Stegodon settled at a certain point in time on a particular island, we have a positive evidence that they actually managed to get there, but this does not tell us how they got there. So what we try to do is to develop a model which allows us to model swimming Stegodons so that we could measure actually what would happen if they try to cross a sea strait, a particular sea strait, by swimming. In order to do that, we used a method which is called agent-based modeling. Agent-based modeling actually is a quite straightforward method, at least if you are looking at organisms. It consists of an environment, in our case a sea strait, and of agents, in our case Stegodon, and regularly more than a single one. Agent-based modeling is actually, in particular, if you look at dispersal events of organisms, it's a quite useful approach because it's not fully determined. So the animals, our agents, can make their own decisions. And I will take you through a chart immediately to show you how that decision process actually works. This is actually the interface of the C-cross model we created. You can see the environment here in the middle. In the center. Do you see my mouse? Yes, and I do not need to run the... This is a sea strait, an area where the agents are starting, and the target area here in yellow, this is where they are arriving. I take you through that interface step by step, but to start with, the environment, the sea straits, which they have to cross, are modeled by three different factors. The first one is the width of the sea strait, which we can simply read out of maps. We worked on a present day map to have a good image of interglacials, at least for the last 100,000 years, let's say, or probably the last million years. You can take this as a good approach. Then we have current speed and current direction, which have an impact on the swimming performance, of course, of the mammals. And in order to do that, to get an idea, we read out the values from maps like you see it on the right-hand side of this slide. This is a map showing the sea currents in January, which we took as a default month. So most of the values I show you, we started with January. Okay, why do the agents move at all in the model? Why do they go into water? Well, they are heading for resources. And what you see on the upper left is actually a very it's a map showing the resource distribution, of course, only on the land patches. This is a very simple code ranging from 0 to 1. A white patch here is void of resources, and a dark patch has maximum resource contribution. The agents are heading for, they are moving around, and they are heading for resources they can view across the sea strait, so they also see the sea strait on the other side, and 90% of the agents in our case head for the maximum resource density. 10% are free to choose a random patch. We simply did that to avoid that they get stuck into local maxima. Yeah? Eventually, this takes them into the water, and then they have to decide, second decision, if they want to start a crossing attempt. There is a comment in the chat. Is that something I should react on? Okay. Eventually, this takes them into the water, and then they have to decide whether they start a crossing attempt. We provided them with a certain degree of hydrophobia, simply in order to be able to distinguish between different species and how much they would avoid getting into contact with water. We distinguish between 5 different categories. 0 would be applied to a terrestrial mammal, which is semi-aquatic anyway. And then we have species like elephants who like to swim. And we took this as a model for our Stegodons. Of course, we have also animals like the unhappy feline companion on the right-hand side, which do not like to get in contact with water. In this case, we assume that 75% would not start a crossing attempt. A crossing attempt of 1 is theoretically possible, but would lead to the abortion of every crossing attempt. We don't need to measure crossing success then, yeah, because if all of the crossing attempts are aborted, then a crossing attempt is necessarily 0. We can actually enter the hydrophobia score among the input factors of the agents. There are 4 of them. This is decisive, of course, for their decision to start a crossing attempt. And once they started a crossing attempt, after they arrived on the target shores, we have, of course, to specify how many animals need to arrive there in order to count that crossing event as successful. A single individual is not enough. You need sufficient ones to establish a population. Our assumption here is comparatively high because we simply took an average number for population size in this respect. If you want to experiment with the model yourself, you can do that. You can choose a different value because 2 are theoretically enough, yeah, sufficient. Okay, so when they decided to start a crossing attempt, we need to define how successful they will be in the crossing. And in order to do that, we are working with a swimming model, which is actually modeling the way terrestrial mammals would swim. This is called quadrupedal paddling, and it's actually observable in all terrestrial mammals. Yeah. The arrows here indicate the movement of the legs. Yeah, they create a thrust by paddling, and if we know how much energy a certain mammal has and how much energy it needs to spend on swimming, then we can calculate how far they get. This is our swimming model. I will not take you to the very deep details now. If there are biologists among us who want to discuss this, I'm very open to talk about it, to explain how it worked. We estimated the energy content which they can spend on swimming based on body mass. There are very general equations with which you can estimate that. Of course, they cannot spend all the energy they have on swimming because they need a lot of energy to maintain their metabolism. So the mobilizable energy of an elephant amounts to 3.2 million kilojoule or 3.2 megajoule, if you want so. And then you can calculate the amount of energy which is necessary if an animal of a certain size swims with a particular speed. Multiply this by body mass and multiply it by the costs of transportation for an animal with a particular body mass. And this tells you then with which mechanical power an animal would swim. Mechanical power means we measure the value here in watts or joule per second, and an elephant would swim with a mechanical power of 3.061 joule per second. So, and if we take then the mobilizable energy and divide it by the mechanical power, we can estimate that an animal with the size of an elephant would be able to swim for 191 kilometers. Yeah. Of course, this is an ideal assumption. The swimming model does not reflect wave drag and anything, any disturbed waters and so on. So it would just acknowledge us for the moment the maximum distance which would be in reach. Actually, the only two values which we need to estimate crossing success are the body mass and the head body length of a mammal, and then we can calculate how far they get. In the model surface proper, the model applies this swimming model, so you do not need to calculate that for yourself. If you want to run it, the model does it. And it it shows you in these values here in the yellow boxes, a few values which monitor the swimming performance from an energetic viewpoint. Okay, let's come back to agent-based modeling, because when we are running this model now, we yield target variables which help us to monitor how successful they perform in a particular sea strait. We took two different kinds of values. The first one is that we actually count the causes of disappearance, because our map has open borders. So the mammals which we let swim, Stegodons in our case, can either leave the map by simply walking off, or they can be washed off the map if it happens in a sea strait. Crossing success was measured by simply counting or relating the number of populations which arrived in the target area to the number of population which actually entered the water. There are different measures, but we took, entrance into the water as a standardized value for that. And in the model interface, you can actually observe the model as long as it runs. In the lower box here, these are the causes of disappearance in brown if they walk off the map in the source area, in blue if they are washed off the map, and in yellow if they are leaving the map in the target area. This is the count, this is the calculation of the crossing success rate in red for the populations and in black for the individuals. And you can monitor these values throughout the model if you want to observe how happy your Stegodons are. There's actually a fourth cause of disappearance, which is not shown here, and that's an orange line. This shows you that your Stegodons or your mammals were not successful because they died of exhaustion. Yeah, this can still happen. Yeah, if the sea strait is too wide or if the currents are too adversive. So let's come back to the Stegodons. Now this map shows you again the fossil localities, this time not organized by site, but you can see that they actually made it far into Wallacea. And in order to check how far they got, we have to acknowledge potential reductions in body mass. So we included into our model a shrinking model in which we made some assumptions about the reduction in body size they would undergo on particular islands. Yeah. For instance, we assumed that in Java and in Mindanao they would suffer body mass reduction of 10%, on Sulawesi of 25%, and on Flores finally of 50%, yeah, compared to the mainland form. And whenever they made ongoing steps towards the east, we took the body size into account, not assuming that they would regain body mass. So, and this is the result shown in a very simple traffic light code. Red means they were not successful, and green and yellow means they are successful in their crossings. And we can take these values now and examine particular dispersal routes a little bit further. Yeah, I will not, we distinguish 6 different routes and we discussed 6 different routes, but I will not take you through all of them. I selected a few which are particularly instructive. Let's start with the routes leading into Flores. In Flores, we have a comparatively extensive fossil record for Stegodons, and at least 2 dispersal events, a very early one in the early Pleistocene, and a second one which is already a very small Stegodon. Then it is replaced in the middle Pleistocene by an ordinary sized one, which did not undergo a lot of body mass reductions. And then in the latest part in Lianghua, we have again a small Stegodon in the late Pleistocene. So this means we have at least 2 different dispersal events which reached Flores. So let's compare 2 routes and start with the first one from the west, from Java to Flores. And as you can see here, all dots are green. That means in January, this route is generally traversable for a Stegodon with a body mass reduction of -10%. But there's a but. Yeah, if we look at this particular sea strait from Bali to Lombok, we can actually see that in January, all of the Stegodons, or the larger part of the Stegodons, makes it. There are a few washed off the map, and some leave the map in the source area. This is simply a stochastic process. Yeah, this should happen in any model run. And as this chart shows you here, all of the, irrespective of body size, all of them are more or less similarly successful. There is no significant difference between the different performances. However, in August, the crossing success drops to 0. And the reason for that is because we have very different currents, which become very strong, and they are directed against the dispersal direction from west to east. Yeah? In this assumption, at least. You can see that the majority of them is washed off the map, and maybe it's astonishing for you that the smallest Stegodon, in this case the lowest number, is actually washed off the map. The reason for that is simply because the currents are so strong, stronger than the swimming performance of the Stegodon, and many of them, even if they would start a crossing attempt, are simply washed ashore in the source area instead of being able to continue their crossing success. Okay, so let's move on. Fortunately, we have a second route, which is actually not traversable from the north, coming from Sulawesi, which is actually not traversable in January. Yeah? So in January, the route from the west would be open, but the route from the north, as you can see here, is closed, and the majority of the agents is actually washed off the map by the strong currents. The sea strait is also comparatively wide. In August, however, the tides are changing, and then the majority of the agents actually makes it. And as you can see, with a crossing success rate of a little bit over 0.6, 60% of all crossing attempts are actually successful. Yeah, that's quite a high number. And a lot of them reach the target shores and can walk off the map in the target shores. So both of the routes can be crossed successfully by Stegodons, but not in the same season. So in January, the preferred route would be the one from the west, and in August, the preferred one would be the one from approaching Flores from the north. But both of them can be taken. Now, once we've reached Flores, actually, we can continue analyzing dispersal across East Nusa Tenggara simply because we have further fossil sites here. There are two localities on Sumba and there is one on Timor. And we can ask the question, in which direction did they actually approach Timor? Now, the interesting point is, once they come from Flores, we are dealing with Stegodons of a reduced body mass, yeah, which has been reduced by 50%. And if you look here at the crossing success rate, you can see that there is one critical bottleneck, which is actually not managed by our smaller size categories. The crossing success rate of a Stegodon with a body mass reduction of 25% is comparatively low. Only around 10% of all crossing attempts are successful. Yet this does not apply to both of the larger ones. Yeah? So mainland-sized Stegodon or body mass reduction of minus 10%, they could manage to get along here. So this is, for a Stegodon, a dwarf Stegodon of Flores size, this is a critical bottleneck, and it would not manage to get in to reach Timor in a counterclockwise direction. In order to get there, they would have to choose the clockwise direction and the other routes. Yeah? Unfortunately, we do not have any Stegodons finds here from these islands yet, but this may change. Once they've made it until that point, we can now ask the question, how do they get on? And actually, there is one critical bottleneck in the last step, actually, before they reach the Aru Islands. The Aru Islands are already located on the Sahul Shelf, so at that moment they would have reached Melanesia, yeah. But in this particular case, they cannot make it. And as the chart here on the right-hand side shows you, none of them will make it, irrespective of the size. And in this case, this is not caused by adverse currents, so that we could say if they would only choose the right season, then they would make it. Actually, as you can see here, the majority dies of exhaustion. So the currents are not so adverse, but this last step, at least from Yamdena here, is so wide that they wouldn't make it. Yeah. As you can see here, there's actually potential route from the north, but I leave this up to another presentation. So let me sum up. We examined now 4 different routes. We identified critical bottlenecks, but of course we can examine further routes into Wallacea or into Melanesia. Unlike routes A to D, we do not have any fossil evidence for the presence of Stegodons for route E and F, which also pose the interesting question, why is that the case? Yeah, because they would actually manage to cross in these, to swim in these areas, yeah, and to reach neighboring islands. Yeah, it would be possible. But this is actually something which we did with that model right now. And if you have such a swimming model, you can now you can work on different maps, you can examine different questions, and I want to give you some examples for how you can expand on this now. Let me first, what we also did is actually comparing interglacial and glacial environments. So the left map here is a map, and we examined a northern entry here into the Philippines. This is China, Taiwan, and Luzon. And this is the same area during glacials. You can actually see that some sea straits which need to be crossed in the interglacials are no longer present in the glacials. But we also have sea straits like this one, which is in a glacial, under glacial conditions, subdivided by an emerging island. So this sea strait here, which cannot be managed to cross in the glacials under glacial circumstances, still possesses its challenges in the interglacials, but it's possible for Stegodons to cross them. However, I'm showing you now the causes of disappearance. You can see here in the interglacials, they are mainly washed off the map, adverse currents. And you can see that this is still the case here, but at least the limited numbers of Stegodons would make it through, they all make it through the first step. Crossing success rates are around 0.5. And in the second step here, in which they perform worse than that, there is still a considerable number washed off the map. Yeah. But this is not the same as in absolute numbers as would be the case in an interglacial situation. We have other sea straits, like this pair of sea straits, in which the currents are changing, It's not that a separate island appears, which makes the distance shorter. In this case, the currents are changing, and that is the reason why here in the interglacial, under interglacial circumstances, Stegodons wouldn't make it. In this case, they can make it, yeah, with considerable numbers. So, and in this, by doing that, you can compare now the performance in under glacial and interglacial circumstances. You can also keep the map, but change the agents, and we did that as well. We let humans of different size swim, yeah. Notably, they are not swimming to any human swimming style. We let them also swim with the same swimming model, yeah. So like dog paddling or quadrupedal paddling, yeah, you wouldn't do that if you know how to swim. But modern swimming styles are a cultural achievement, and we do not know how far that dates back into the Pleistocene, actually. So we let our humans swim, and just to have a look at the sea strait between Bali and Lombok, because we did that again, you knew already that the Stegodons would all make it. But what will surprise you is actually that also humans of different size categories would make it, including dwarf humans like the Homo floresiensis, which we also let swim. Yeah? So all of them manage to cover these distances. Here I show you, on this map I do not show you the traffic light code. But we've tried it for all the other sea straits, of course, as well. They make it into Flores, yeah, already if they would have shrunken earlier, yeah. Okay, so that's what we did. We have now monitored all the sea straits across Wallacea. There are still a few missing, which we still need to measure, which we did not consider in the first place because they are really comparatively wide. We also did not include sea straits which were in our model for the moment, which were smaller than 10 kilometers, simply because all of them make it anyway. Yeah, at least with our swimming model, we did not need to include that. But what we can do now is actually turn the direction around. If we can monitor mammals swimming from Sundaland into Wallacea and potentially into Meganesia, we can of course apply the same model to the marsupials, like for instance the cuscus, which entered, of which we know that they've entered Wallacea by own means. Yeah, some of them have been transported. I'm aware of that humans simply took them along. But there are actually also species, for instance, on Sulawesi, which have not been transported by humans. So we can examine, would they make it by swimming? Or do they need other means of transportation? Yeah. And of course, if we adapt the swimming model, we can also let non-mammalian taxa swim. Yeah, like monitor lizards. And this is exactly what we are planning to do as our next step, adapt our swimming models and let reptiles swim. They also underwent dispersal, and it's for the Komodo lizard, the Komodo monitor, it's an open question whether they underwent island gigantism on Komodo, or whether there's a large one is the only one which would be able to make it that far. This is our next step. And in the end, I would like to introduce you to some of the people who are not here with us at the moment. I don't need to introduce Mika. Everybody knows you, yeah. The next person is Ivan Pramestianvar. He's our oceanographer. He is the one in charge of all our wisdom about the sea straits, all we need to know. The next person is Alexandra van der Her. She's an expert in island evolution in particular, and island dwarfing and island gigantism. Eriksson Hölzchen, he is the person who actually programmed the parent version of our Seacross model, which was a model originally designed for letting humans cross sea straits by different means. Martin, I think everybody knows you too, and if this is not the case, yeah, it should be so right now, because Martin, Nicolas, Emanuel, and Jan Olaf are the students who were executing and performing all the tedious experiments and gathered all the data. Somebody needs to do that. And if there are students among you now in the audience who also want to show up in the lower line, please contact Mika. Yeah, we are using this model in our teaching program. And of course, we are always looking for people who have fun in experimenting with computer program. The QR code on the right takes you to a website where you can check the model. Don't do it with your mobile or with your tablet. Just use that to scan the code and open the model with your computer, simply because it doesn't work that well on mobiles, or it's very slow. Actually, you do better with a computer. So, and that was it. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I'm open for your questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christine. Let's give her a round of applause, everybody. Yeah, that's an amazing presentation.
Thanks a lot.
And lots of illustration. I like that a lot.
Now maps. I'm a biogeographer. I'm sorry for this. Arrows on maps, that's my profession.
But that's not boring. That's a lot of great illustrations. I like that. Now we move on to our discussion. Maybe from everyone in the room, is there any questions? You can always ask by pointing your fingers at the Zoom, or probably on the comment section. You can always ask by using Indonesian or English. Bu Kristen is very open with any language, right?
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. Pak Alvan, yeah. Oh, that's a really long one. I think you should check on it yourself, miss, on the chat. Yeah, you should read it, yeah. Yeah, that's a really long one. Or probably Mr. Alvan would like to ask directly via Zoom. Mr. Alvan, can you hear me? Or probably you can read it.
3 questions.
Christian.
Yes, 3 questions. Every crossing attempt, did the Stegodon herd wait for some time before they decided to cross further? We measured every sea strait separately with the model, actually. We did not, but we made an assumption that on the very small islands with actually not a very variable array of resources being available, these were only, we considered them only as stepping stones, so they can have a rest there and then continue. But viable populations would probably only make it on larger islands with a diversity of habitats, where different resources, in particular for animals in the size of a Stegodon. Actually not in the website, but it doesn't work in the website, but if we work with the model in the original program surface, we also can upload real maps. this, in the first run, we just approached that with a very simplified map with two borders running in parallel over 100 kilometers. This is rarely the case. And in the real world, yeah. So in our reconstruction, actually we make some very simplifying assumptions about the sea straits either, which lead to an overestimation of the crossing success rates, but we can replace that by real maps, yeah. We also assumed that the currents across the sea strait would be similar from one area to the other one, across the entire expand of the sea strait. So, next one. Okay, we assumed that for that model, but we measured, of course, all of the size classes for all of the sea straits. So there was no particular reason, actually. We adapted it in particular in Sulawesi and to in Flores to those specimens which are actually, for which we have fossil evidence, yeah. And we got values for that from the reconstruction of Sandra van der Heer, yeah. So we adapted it to that, but the specimen from Mindanao is, it looks like ordinary size, yeah, but it's actually not that well preserved, and Sandra told me that it's not good enough to do a real body mass reconstruction. Yeah, it's tooth fragments, as far as I know. And the third question was? No, it does not account for that, yeah, simply because it's a measuring instrument for crossing success across sea straits, yeah. You can replace, of course, the distribution of the resources. You can replace by real maps. You can replace the features of the sea straits with real maps. That's all possible, but we only designed that model to measure crossing success across a particular sea strait. Not the reason why they went into the water.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there any other question? Thank you so much, Kristen. No, I get a lot of things. Mr. Alvan said thank you for the answers. Now, since no one, oh yeah, there's, here you go, Pak.
I just wondering whether elephant crossing to the other island is just based on assumption that the presence in other island is swimming, crossing by swimming, or just we make assumption that elephant migration by swimming, not walking, maybe during when the island connected. There is evidence that present day elephant are swimming across the island, across the other island, because, for example, for the long distance strait, we cannot see the island. So how they, I mean, how the elephant have idea, for example, I will look that island. For the Bali Strait, maybe yes, we can see the from the possibility that uh,
Yes.
island, so they cannot see it. Yeah.
Yes, there is actually in the model, there is a viewing distance factor with which you can account for that. Yeah, because if they would not perceive resources on the other end of the sea strait, they would not have a reason to go into the water. Yeah, of course, you know, we could actually replace our hydrophobia by, say, something like the inverse value on the lust of swimming. Yeah, we could do that, and then we could make them swim irrespective of they see resources or not. But we would consider it rather more reasonable to assume that they are heading for something. Yeah, we know that elephants actually like to swim. They have been observed to swim in the ocean in the Bay of Bengal for distances of over 50 kilometers. So and simply for fun, they went out there. They didn't head anywhere. They just went swimming. Yeah. But we cannot assume this for other mammals too. And of course, you can run the model with a lot of different animals. That's the first part of your question. We could acknowledge for that. Yeah. Concerning the model as such, you can of course also say, what about bad weather conditions? If the viewing distance is shorter because there are clouds, there's fog, or you know, they simply can't see that far. Yeah, you could acknowledge this with the viewing distance, but for our model, we assumed that they chose the right season with the best conditions. Yeah. And then, of course, as you can see here, we also measured the dispersal across between mainland Southeast Asia, Sumatra and Java and Borneo. And I was surprised actually that in January, there is no way for an elephant-sized animal to reach Borneo by swimming. There was a good reason why I didn't speak about this, yeah? Because this shows us that actually it would be a safer bet to wait for glacial conditions and simply walk than swim. Yeah? And this might explain the differences in the fauna in Borneo, mammalian fauna in Borneo compared to the one in Sumatra and Java, because these islands are connected. Yeah, they can be reached.
Thank you, Bu Christine. Okay, is there any other question? Yeah, from Mr. Mirza.
Bu Christine, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering about why is the main reason they move from Semenanjung and then move to Kalimantan and then move to Eastern Indonesia? Is there any specific reason? They are looking for better life, or they are looking for more warm condition or something?
Yeah, just having fun.
Just having, yeah.
No, because they were not at peace. No. Actually, from a biological viewpoint, there are a number of reasons which are discussed. Yeah? They are heading for resources. If population pressure becomes too big, yeah, this would be the most common assumption, and that's exactly why we acknowledged that in our model, that they are actually, their motivation in the model, they head for resources. This is what they want, what they are after. Yeah, and actually on glacial maps, for instance, we could monitor resources or resource density with reconstructing net primary productivity. Yeah, there are actually very good values for that. which are also provided on maps in resolution, which we can use on our maps. Yeah. In the model, in this very simplified version, we simply distributed them arbitrarily. So there's a new resource distribution every time you restart the model.
Right. And then the second question is, when they are crossing, for example, from East Java to Bali from Lombok, when they are tired during their swimming, and then they can do something like a water tapping as we did in the swimming pool.
Well, they wouldn't do. They would, in the model, they would actually, I'm speaking in the model now. Now, the agents don't do that. Yeah. They simply go swimming until they either reach the target shore or they are washed off the map. There is a difference actually between the 50 kilometers. The elephant was actually observed to swim in the Bay of Bengal, and the 180 kilometers, which we can consider as a theoretical maximum. Plus, there are a number of factors which we did not take into account. For instance, water temperature. Yeah. They would lose, even if the water has a temperature of 20 degrees, the thermal conductivity in water is higher than in air. Yeah, so they would lose a lot of, body heat by simply being enclosed in water, and this severely reduces the time they can spend in water. Yeah, the model could take this into account. Yeah, we have a factor which we can use that way to reduce or limit the time they can actually spend in water, yeah, irrespective of their swimming performance. But for the moment, the model measures only swimming performance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Christine. Thank you, Pak Mirzam. Is there any other question? So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Besides the wave energy and the exhaustion and probably hypothermic conditions, is there any possibilities that predators probably eat them on the way?
That is a fantastic idea. We did not account for sharks. Sharks and naga are not included in the model. Of course, you could theoretically, install a stochastic process which simply kills them, no matter whether they are exhausted or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second part of your question is actually, and this is something we are discussing. At the moment, our model is a single species model.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So ecological interactions of species are not included.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But we could do that. Imagine you are, say, a small cat, and then a large predator arrives. Yeah. Even if you would have a hydrophobia of leading you to abort 75% of your crossing attempts, why not making a predator approach lowering that value?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To run away from the predators.
And simply make it more likely for you to start the crossing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this would be a way we could actually account for particular species interactions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This would be a possibility to introduce this into the model. Yeah.
Thank you, Bu Christine. There's another question from Pa Alvin actually. Are all these results predictable, or are there results that surprise you and the team, perhaps avoiding predators as a triggers? Yeah.
We
From Pa Alvin. Perhaps,
Yeah. Well, I was immediately focusing, of course, on the bottlenecks in the first step. Yeah, because it's an interesting question. There is, for instance, a fossil here. Yeah, so halfway between Mindanao and Sulawesi. And we do not know from which direction it actually approached. Yeah, and this is also something you could check with a model. I was surprised now on this map. Oops. On this map, I was surprised that actually here in this region, in the Moluccas, we do not have any fossil record. Oh, yeah. Is that because somebody needs to look? Or are there other reasons? Because this area is accessible by swimming. So, you know, swimming or currents, they would not provide an excuse not to go there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there is this is an interesting question which inspire further studies. Yeah. And this is what I liked about the model. Things which I did not expect.
Yeah. I'm from Maluku, by the way.
Oh, cool. We need to go there and
yeah.
have a look.
Come to us. Thank you, Christine. Is there any other question or discussion that everyone would like to propose? Okay. I think that's it for now, Bu Christine.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all your questions.
Yeah. Another round of applause, please, everybody. Another round of applause, please, everybody. Yeah. Well, Bu Christine, when there is a beginning, there is an end. So, on behalf of our postgraduate study program, we would like to give you a gift so you will forever remember us in your dreams. So, I would like to invite our head of postgraduate study program and Bu Christine in front.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bu Christine and Pak Mirzam. And that's all for our SEMAT for today. We will be back next week. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye.